sat alone at a small table in the corner of the observation deck. That was on Unity Station, the biggest space station that floated above Earth. Through the large glass windows, she could see the blue and green planet below. It looked peaceful from up here. White clouds moved slowly across its surface. Tiny lights twinkled on the dark side where humans lived in their cities. The station was decorated for something the humans called Christmas. Had read about this holiday before coming here. It was a time when humans celebrated with their families. They gave gifts to each other. They ate special food together. They told each other that they loved one another. It seemed like a beautiful tradition. But was not celebrating, she was waiting, and she was nervous. Was a species from a planet far away from Earth. Her people were tall and thin, with skin that looked like pale purple in the light. Her eyes were large and silver, like two moons on her face. Her fingers were long and graceful. Most beings thought they were beautiful. But was different from other. She had been born without the ability to hear. Among her people, this was the worst thing that could happen to a child. They believed in something called the symphony. They believed that all living things were connected through sound. They thought that the universe itself was singing and every could hear this cosmic music. It was their religion. It was their identity. It was everything to them. To be deaf was to be cut off from this symphony. To be deaf was to be spiritually dead. That is what her people believed. Had spent her whole life being treated like something broken. Her parents loved her, but they looked at her with sad eyes. Her teachers gave her extra help, but they spoke about her like she was not in the room. Other children did not want to play with her. They said she was cursed. They said being near her might make them lose their hearing too. So had studied humans. She had learned that on Earth there were many deaf people who lived happy lives. Humans had created languages made of hand movements. They had built tools to help deaf people communicate. They did not think deafness was a curse. They thought it was just a different way of being. This gave hope. She saved money for many years. She learned human languages, including their sign language. And finally, she made the long journey to Unity Station to start a new life. That was 3 months ago. Since then had found work as a translator of written documents. She had rented a small room on the station. She had tried to make friends, but it was hard. People were polite to her, but they did not know how to talk to her. They would start conversations and then give up when they realized she could not hear them. They would smile and wave and then walk away. Then she had met. Was a human man who worked in trade. They had started talking through written messages on the station network. He seemed interested in her culture. He asked her many questions about the. He told her she was fascinating. He told her she was beautiful. When he asked her to meet him for dinner on Christmas Eve, had felt something she had not felt in a long time. She had felt wanted. Now she sat at the table wearing her nicest robe. It was deep blue with silver patterns that matched her eyes. She had spent an hour arranging her hair. She had practiced smiling in the mirror. She wanted everything to be perfect. Arrived 20 minutes late. Watched him walk through the crowded. He was a tall man with light brown hair and a nice smile, but something was wrong. He was not smiling now. He looked uncomfortable. He sat down across from her. His lips moved. Had a translator implant that could help her understand some speech by reading lips, but it was not perfect. She caught some words. Sorry I'm late, didn't realize, the situation. Felt cold. She typed on her small tablet and showed him the screen. Is something wrong? Looked at the tablet, then he looked at her. His face was tight. He spoke again and this time caught more of his words. Look, this is awkward. I didn't really understand before. I mean, I knew you were deaf, but I didn't think about what that meant. This is just. It's a lot, you know. I don't know sign language. I don't want to type everything I say. It's Christmas Eve. I wanted to have fun, not work. Read his lips and felt her heart sink. She had heard versions of this before. She typed again. I can lip read. We can make it work. Shook his head. He was already standing up. He was putting on his jacket. I'm sorry, he said. I just don't think this is going to work. You're nice, really, but I need someone I can actually talk to. You understand, right? It's nothing personal." It was personal. It was the most personal thing in the world, but just nodded. She had learned long ago not to show her pain. If she cried, people got uncomfortable. If she got angry, people called her difficult. So she just sat there with a calm face and watched leave. He did not look back. There was full of noise that could not hear. Music was playing. People were laughing and talking. Couples were holding hands. Families were gathering for holiday dinners. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone had someone to be with. Except her. Looked down at her cold cup of tea. She had been foolish to think things would be different here. Humans were supposed to be accepting. Humans were supposed to celebrate differences. But humans were still people, and people got tired of things that were difficult. People wanted easy connections. People did not want to learn new ways of communicating just to talk to one deaf alien woman. She picked up her bag and stood. She would go back to her small room. She would read a book. She would pretend that this Christmas thing did not matter to her. She had been alone for most of her life. What was one more night? Started walking toward the exit. There was crowded, and she had to move carefully between the tables. She kept her eyes down. She did not want anyone to see the tears that were starting to form. That was when she felt something tug at her robe. She stopped. She looked down. Two small human girls were standing in front of her. They had curly dark hair with red ribbons in it. Their skin was warm brown, their eyes big and bright. They were wearing matching green dresses with tiny bells on them. The smaller one was holding his robe. The older one was looking up at her with an expression of serious concern. And then the older girl raised her hands and started to move them in a way that knew very well. She was signing. The older girl's hands moved through the air like small birds. Her movements were not perfect. They were a little clumsy, a little slow, but understood every word. "Hello, are you sad?" Stood frozen for a moment. In all her time on the station, no stranger had ever signed to her. She had seen other deaf beings on Unity Station, and sometimes they would sign to each other. But hearing people almost never learned sign language unless they had to. It was too much work, they said. It took too long, they said. Yet here was this small human child, maybe 8 years old, signing to a complete stranger. Knelt down so she was closer to the girl's height. Her long robe pooled around her on the floor. She raised her own hands and signed back. "Hello, yes, I'm a little sad. How do you know how to sign?" The smaller girl, who looked about 6 years old, let go of his robe. Her hands started moving too. Her signs were even more clumsy than her sister's, but she was trying very hard. "Our Grammy is deaf," she signed. "We learned so we could talk to her." "Grammy says signing is like dancing with your words," the older girl added. Her face was very serious, like she was sharing something important. Felt something strange happening in her chest. It was like a door that had been locked for a long time was starting to open. A feeling she did not recognize at first. Then she understood. It was warmth. "Your Grammy sounds very wise," signed. "She is," the older girl agreed. "She is the person we know, even wiser than our teacher, and our teacher has been to 3 different planets." "What is your name?" asked. "I am Iris," the older girl signed. "This is my sister Maya. What is your name?" "My name is—" Maya's small hands moved. "That is a pretty name. Why are you purple?" "Maya," Iris looked embarrassed. "You cannot ask people why they are colors." But smiled. It was the first real smile she had felt all day. "It is okay. I am purple because I am. My people come from a planet very far from here. All of us have this color skin." Maya nodded like this made perfect sense. "I like purple. It is my 3rd favorite color, after pink and sparkly." "Sparkly is not a color," Iris said. "It should be," Maya replied firmly. Watched the 2 sisters with wonder. Human children were so open. They did not seem to care that she was an alien. They did not seem bothered that she was deaf. They just saw a person standing alone and decided to talk to her. Iris looked at with curious eyes. "Why are you alone? It is Christmas Eve. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve." Hesitated. How could she explain what had happened with? How could she tell these children that a grown man had decided she was too much trouble? It seemed like such an ugly thing to share on such a festive night. "I was supposed to meet someone," she finally signed. "But he decided he did not want to spend time with me." Maya's face changed. Her small features scrunched up in anger. She looked like a tiny warrior ready for battle. "Why?" she demanded with her hands. "Why did he not want to spend time with you?" "Because," paused, "because talking to me is different, I cannot hear, so people have to sign or write things down. Some people do not want to do that." Maya turned to her sister. Her hands flew so fast they could not follow everything she said, but she caught words like mean and stupid and not fair. Iris listened to her sister with a serious face, nodding along. Then Iris turned back to, "That person is stupid," she signed matter-of-factly. "Grammy says that people who do not want to learn new ways of talking are just lazy. She says that love is about making space for people. If someone does not want to make space for you, they do not deserve you." Blinked. This child was speaking with more wisdom than many adults had met. "Your Grammy says many smart things," signed. "She has had lots of years to learn them," Maya added. "She is very old, almost 50. Did not know much about human ages, but she suspected that 50 was not actually very old. She chose not to say this. Iris tilted her head, looking at the way someone might look at a puzzle they were trying to solve. Then she straightened up, as if she had made an important decision. "You should not be alone tonight," she signed. "We are going to have dinner with our family. Grammy is here and Mama and Daddy. They are making lots of food. You could come with us." Maya nodded eagerly. "Yes, you should come. Grammy makes the best pie. It has apples in it and a crunchy top. And Daddy makes potatoes with cheese. And Mama makes bread that is so soft it is like eating clouds." His heart squeezed. The offer was so simple, so genuine. These children did not see a deaf alien who was too much trouble. They just saw someone who was sad and alone, and they wanted to help. "I do not want to bother your family," signed. "They do not know me." "That is okay," Iris said. "They will know you after dinner. That is how it works. First you are strangers, then you eat food together, then you are friends. Grammy says that is why humans invented dinner parties." Before could respond, a voice called out. She could not hear it, but she saw both girls turn their heads toward the same direction. A moment later, a woman appeared through the crowd. She was older than the girls, but had the same warm brown skin and dark curly hair. Her hair had streaks of silver in it that caught the light from the Christmas decorations. She walked with calm confidence, moving smoothly between the tables. When she reached them, her hands started moving immediately, even as her lips formed words. "Iris, Maya, I told you not to wander off." Then she looked at, and her hands kept moving. "I am so sorry if they bothered you." But notice something important. This woman was signing, not slowly, not hesitantly. She was signing as naturally as breathing. "They did not bother me," signed back. "They were very kind." The woman studied for a long moment. Her eyes were dark and thoughtful, saw something pass across her face. It was the look of someone who recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood. "I am Josephine," the woman signed. "I am these girls' grandmother, and you are." "I am." Josephine nodded slowly. Then she smiled. It was a warm smile full of understanding. "The girl said you were alone tonight. Is that true?" "Yes," admitted. "I came to meet someone, but they left." "She got stood up," Maya signed indignantly, "by a stupid person." "Maya," Josephine warned, but there was a hint of amusement in her expression. She looked at again. We are about to have dinner in our family quarters. My daughter and her husband are cooking. Nothing fancy, just Christmas Eve supper. Would you like to join us?" Did not know what to say. She looked at this human woman who signed so beautifully, at the two children who had stopped a stranger just to ask if she was okay. She thought about her empty room, her cold dinner alone. "I do not want to impose," she signed. Josephine's smile grew wider. "You are not imposing, we are inviting you. There is a difference." Maya grabs robe again. "Please come. Grammy really does make the best pie, and I will show you my doll. Her name is Princess Stardust and she has a spaceship." Looked at the three of them, the grandmother with her knowing eyes, the older sister with her serious face, the younger sister with her fierce little heart. For the first time since had left, felt something like hope. "Okay," she signed, "I will come." Maya cheered silently, throwing her hands in the air. Iris smiled and took hand to lead her through the crowd. Josephine walked beside them, her presence calm and steady, and let herself be led toward something she had stopped believing in long ago. A family. The family quarters were in a different part of the station, away from the busy commercial areas. Followed Josephine and the girls through long corridors decorated with lights and garlands. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of the Christmas celebration. Paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling. Small trees made of metal and lights stood in corners. People walked past carrying wrapped boxes and bags of food. Watched all of this with curious eyes. She had read about Christmas in her studies of human culture, but reading was different from seeing. The whole station seemed to glow with warmth and excitement. Maya held's hand as they walked. Her small fingers were warm and sticky, probably from some candy she had eaten earlier, but did not mind. It had been so long since anyone had held her hand like this, like they wanted to make sure she did not get lost, like they wanted her to stay close. Iris walked on her other side, pointing out things along the way. She signed while she walked, which was not easy, but she managed. "That is where I go to school," she signed, pointing at a large door with colorful pictures on it. "And that is where Maya takes her dance class, and that big window shows Earth. Sometimes we watch the sunrise from there. It only takes 90 minutes for the sun to go all the way around." "That sounds beautiful," signed. "It is. Grammy always cries when she watches it. She says it is because she remembers being a little girl on Earth before she moved to space." Josephine walked ahead of them, her steps steady and sure. Every few seconds she would turn to look back at the group, making sure everyone was keeping up. When her eyes met, she would smile. It was a kind smile, an understanding smile. They reached a door marked with the number 742. Josephine pressed her hand to the scanner, and the door slid open. Inside was a small but comfortable home. The living area had soft furniture and colorful pillows. A holographic tree floated in one corner, slowly rotating and casting rainbow lights across the walls. Paper decorations hung everywhere. Could see that the children had made many of them. The shapes were uneven and covered in glitter. Two adults stood in the kitchen area. One was a woman who looked like a younger version of Josephine. She had the same dark curly hair, though without the silver streaks. She was stirring something in a large pot. The smell must have been wonderful because Maya immediately started pulling toward the kitchen. The other adult was a man with light brown skin and a kind face. He was wearing an apron that said "World's Best Dad" in bright letters. He was cutting vegetables on a board. When they saw enter, both of them stopped what they were doing. Their eyes went wide for a moment, but then something happened that made hearts skip. The woman put down her spoon, the man put down his knife, and both of them raised their hands and started signing. "Hello," the woman signed. Her movements were slower than Josephine's, a little rusty like someone who did not practice often, but she was trying. "Welcome to our home, I am David," the man signed. His signing was even more hesitant, but his smile was warm. Any friend of the girls is a friend of ours. Did not know what to say. In 3 months on this station, she had met hundreds of people. Almost none of them had tried to sign with her. Most of them just spoke slowly and loudly as if that would somehow help. Some of them just gave up and walked away. But this family, these strangers, had immediately switched to her language, without being asked, without complaining, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you," signed. "Thank you for having me." Maya was already dragging her toward the table. Sit here, sit here. This is the best seat. You can see the tree from here, and you will be next to me so I can show you Princess Stardust after dinner." Sat where Maya pointed. The chair was soft and comfortable. Iris sat on her other side, and Josephine sat across from her. And David went back to their cooking, but they kept looking over at with friendly faces. "Mama," Iris signed to get her mother's attention, "is from very far away, she is." Nodded. "I know your people are famous for your poetry, yes, and your fabric arts." Was surprised. Most humans she met knew nothing about her species except that they were purple. "Yes," she signed. "We have a long tradition of weaving. My grandmother was a master weaver." "That is wonderful," signed. "Maybe you can tell us about it during dinner." This was new. People wanting to hear about her culture. People asking questions because they were interested, not because they were being polite. Josephine leaned forward. Her dark eyes studied with gentle attention. "The girls told me you were supposed to meet someone tonight," she signed. "Someone who left." Felt her cheeks grow warm. Even with her purple skin, she knew the blush was visible. "Yes, a man I had been talking to online. We were going to have dinner together, but when he met me in person, he decided I was too much work." Josephine nodded slowly. There was no pity in her eyes, only understanding. "May I tell you something?" she signed. Nodded. "I was born deaf," Josephine signed. "On Earth in a city called Atlanta. My parents were both hearing. They did not know sign language when I was born. They had to learn. It was hard for them. Some of our relatives said they should just get me cochlear implants and make me normal. But my parents refused. They said I was already normal. I was just a different kind of normal." Listened carefully. She had never met another deaf person who was not. She did not know that humans could be born deaf too. "When I was young," Josephine continued, "I dated many people who said they were okay with my deafness. But when things got hard, they would leave. They would say I was too difficult. That communication was too much work. I heard those words so many times that I started to believe them." "What changed?" asked. Josephine smiled. "I met my husband. He was hearing, but he already knew sign language because his mother was deaf. To him, signing was just another way of talking. He never made me feel like I was extra work. He made me feel like I was worth the effort. Any effort." "Where is he now?" A shadow passed over Josephine's face. "He passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. But he gave me 40 wonderful years. He gave me my daughter. He gave me these 2 beautiful granddaughters who learned to sign before they learned to read because they wanted to talk to their Grammy." Maya had been watching the conversation. She tapped his arm. "Grandpa Ray was the best," she signed. "He used to make pancakes shaped like animals, and he would take us to the observation deck to watch ships come in. And he always said that Grammy was the most beautiful woman in the whole universe." Iris nodded. "He said that signing was like having a secret language. He said it made him feel special that he could talk to Grammy when other people could not." Looked at this family. At the grandmother who had lived her whole life in a hearing world. At the daughter who had learned to sign for her mother. At the granddaughters who had learned to sign for their grandmother. At the son-in-law who was even now trying to remember signs he had not used in a while. This was what accommodation looked like, realized. Not tolerating someone despite their differences, but building a whole world where those differences could exist comfortably. David came to the table with a large bowl of mashed potatoes. He set it down carefully, then signed, "I hope you are hungry. Always makes enough food for an army." "It is Christmas," called from the kitchen. She was carrying a platter of meat that smelled incredible. Christmas is supposed to have too much food. That is the rule. Maya bounced in her seat. "And pie, do not forget the pie." "The pie is cooling," Josephine signed. "You will get pie after dinner if you eat your vegetables." Maya made a face. "Vegetables are the worst part of food." "Vegetables are important," Iris said seriously. "They make you strong." "I am already strong," Maya replied. "Watch." She held up her small arm and flexed her tiny muscle. Everyone laughed. Even laughed, though she could not hear the sound. She could feel the joy in the room, the way the air seemed to vibrate with happiness. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt like she belonged somewhere. Dinner was chaos, beautiful, wonderful chaos. Dishes passed from hand to hand around the table, had made roasted meat with herbs and gravy. David had prepared potatoes with cheese melted on top, just like Maya had promised. There was bread that was soft and warm, and vegetables that Maya poked at with suspicion. There was a salad with fruits that had never seen before. There was a drink that sparkled and tickled the tongue. Everyone talked at once. Hands flew in the air as conversations overlapped. Josephine signed with her daughter about something that happened at work. David asked Iris about her school project on alien ecosystems. Maya told Princess Stardust, her doll, about all the food on the table, even though Princess Stardust was not really at the table but waiting in Maya's room. At first, did not know how to join in. She was used to being on the outside of conversations. She was used to watching other people talk and laugh while she sat in silence. But this family would not let her stay on the outside. Maya tugged at her sleeve. "What is your favorite food on your planet?" "Thought about it. We have a dish called. It is made from a plant that grows in our rivers. We dry it and grind it into powder, then mix it with water and heat it until it becomes like pudding. It is sweet and makes your tongue tingle." Maya's eyes went wide. "That sounds strange, strange but good. I want to try it." "Maybe someday you can," signed. Iris leaned in from the other side. "Tell us about your planet. What does it look like?" So told them. She described the two suns that rose and set at different times, so the sky was always changing colors. She told them about the great forests of crystal trees that sang when the wind blew through them. She explained the floating cities that her people built on clouds of magnetic stone. She talked about the rivers that flowed upward because of the strange gravity, and the animals that had learned to swim through the air. The whole family listened. Even David stopped eating to watch her hands move, asked questions about the food. Josephine wanted to know about the art. Maya was fascinated by the animals, especially when described a creature that was like a cross between a cat and a bird and glowed in the dark. "I want one," Maya declared. "Can I have a please?" "Do not do well off our planet," explained. "They need the special air and gravity to survive, but I have pictures in my room. I can show you sometime." "Yes, tomorrow. Can she come tomorrow, Grammy?" Josephine smiled at, "You are welcome any time." As dinner continued, learned about this family too, was a doctor who worked at the station's medical center. She treated all kinds of beings, not just humans. David was an engineer who helped design and repair the station's systems. Iris was at the top of her class and wanted to become an explorer when she grew up. Maya wanted to be a princess, but also a chef, but also a spaceship captain, but also someone who takes care of baby animals. "You can be all of those things," Josephine told her granddaughter. "There are no rules that say you have to choose just one." Thought about her own childhood, about how they had decided what she could not be before she was even old enough to decide what she wanted. They had said she could not be a singer in their temples. She could not be a diplomat who needed to hear subtle tones. She could not be a pilot who needed to hear the sounds of her ship. They had given her a small box to live in and expected her to stay there. But humans seemed different. They let their children dream without limits. They did not see barriers, they saw possibilities. After the main meal was finished, Josephine brought out the pie. It was golden brown on top, with a pattern of twisted dough that looked like leaves. When she cut into it, could smell apples and cinnamon and something warm and sweet. Maya could barely contain herself. Finally, pie. I have been waiting my whole life for this pie. You had pie last week, Iris reminded her. That was last week pie. This is Christmas pie. It is completely different. Josephine served everyone a piece. When took her first bite, she understood why Maya had been so excited. The pie was incredible. The apples were soft and sweet. The crust was buttery and crunchy. The spices danced on her tongue. This is wonderful, signed to Josephine. You are a very talented baker. Josephine laughed silently, could see her shoulders shake. I have been making this pie for 30 years. My mother taught me and her mother taught her. It is a family recipe. Now is learning it, and someday she will teach Iris and Maya. Traditions pass down through generations, signed. My people do the same with weaving. Each mother teaches her daughter the patterns that were taught to her. Do you weave? Asked. Hesitated. I used to, when I was young before I left my planet. I was not very good at it. The patterns are supposed to match the symphony, the sounds of the universe. Since I cannot hear, my patterns never felt right. The other weavers said they were wrong. The table went quiet. Even Maya stopped bouncing in her seat. Josephine set down her fork. Her hands moved slowly, carefully. When I was young, people told me many things I could not do. I could not be a teacher because how would students understand me? I could not travel because it would be too dangerous without hearing. I could not raise children because they needed to hear a mother's voice. Do you know what I did? Shook her head. I did all of those things anyway. I became a teacher for 20 years at a school for deaf children. I traveled to 12 different planets. I raised my daughter to be brave and kind and strong. And I never once heard her voice, but I never once missed a thing she said. Maya reached over and put her small hand on his arm. Maybe your weaving is not wrong. Maybe it is just a different kind of right. Like how Grammy talks a different way, but it is still talking. Looked at this little girl with her sticky fingers and her messy hair and her fierce heart. In her whole life, no one had ever suggested that her differences might be valuable, that what others saw as mistakes might actually be something special. You are very wise for someone so small, signed. Maya grinned proudly. Grammy says I am an old soul. I do not know what that means, but I think it is good. After pie, the family moved to the living area. David put on a movie, something with bright colors and funny characters that the girls loved. Maya climbed into his lap without asking permission. She was warm and heavy, and she smelled like pie and soap. Is this okay? Signed to Josephine. She does this with everyone, Josephine replied. She is a cuddler. If you are uncomfortable, you can tell her to move. But was not uncomfortable. She wrapped her arms around the small human child and watched the movie play on the screen. She could not hear the dialogue, but text appeared at the bottom that she could read. Maya kept tapping her shoulder to point out her favorite parts. Iris sat close by, explaining the plot whenever something confusing happened. David brought out blankets and wrapped them around everyone, made hot drinks that warmed hands. Outside the window, Earth rotated slowly below. Lights sparkled across its surface. Ships moved in and out of the station's ports, carrying beings from 100 different worlds. And inside this small room, a woman who had spent her whole life feeling broken began to feel whole. When the movie ended, Maya was asleep in his lap. Her small fingers were still curled around his robe, holding on even in her dreams. Looked down at the child and felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not know humans could heal wounds they did not even know existed, but this one had. This whole family had. Maybe that was the real gift of Christmas. Not the decorations or the food or the presents, but the simple act of making room at your table for someone who had none. The night grew late. Maya was carried to her bed by David, still clutching her doll. Iris hugged tightly before going to her own room, making promise to come back and see her alien animal pictures. Pressed extra containers of food into his hands, enough to feed her for 3 days. "You are too thin," signed. "You need to eat more. Come back next week and I will make my special soup." Tried to refuse the food but would not hear of it. Or rather, she would not see it. She simply kept pushing containers forward until gave up and accepted them. Josephine walked her to the door of the family quarters. The corridor outside was quiet now. Most of the station's residents had gone to bed. The Christmas lights still glowed, but they seemed softer in the late hour, like stars that were getting sleepy. "Thank you," signed. The words felt too small for what she felt. "Thank you for everything. I do not know how to repay you." Josephine waved her hand. "There is nothing to repay. We had an extra seat at our table. You needed somewhere to sit. That is all." But it was not all, and they both knew it. "Can I tell you something?" Josephine asked. Nodded. "When I was young, I spent many years being angry. Angry at people who would not learn to sign. Angry at systems that were not built for people like me. Angry at the universe for making me different when everyone else seemed the same." Josephine's hands moved slowly, thoughtfully. "I had every right to be angry. The world was unfair to me many times, but eventually I learned something important." "What did you learn?" "That the anger was keeping me alone. Not because I was wrong to be angry. I was right to be angry. But I was spending so much time waiting for the world to change that I forgot to look for the people who were already different. The people who would meet me where I was instead of asking me to come to them." Thought about this. She had been angry too, at her parents who loved her but could not hide their sadness, at her people who saw her as incomplete, at who had left her sitting alone on Christmas Eve. "How do you find those people?" she asked. "The ones who will meet you where you are." Josephine smiled. "Usually they find you, like my granddaughters found you tonight. 2 little girls who saw someone sad and decided to do something about it. The trick is letting them in when they show up." Thought about Maya tugging at her robe, about Iris signing with her clumsy but determined hands, about this whole family who had welcomed a stranger into their home without question. "Why did you invite me?" she asked. "You did not know me. I could have been anyone." "That is true," Josephine agreed. "But I know what it feels like to be alone in a crowd. I know what it feels like to watch other people connect while you stand on the outside. I know what it feels like to have someone walk away because you were too much work." She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and dry, her grip gentle but sure. "You reminded me of myself, and I thought if I had been a stranger on Christmas Eve, I would have wanted someone to invite me in." His eyes were blurring. Not with tears exactly, but with something her species felt in moments of deep emotion. The world seemed to shimmer, like looking at the sun through water. "In my culture," she signed with her free hand, "there is a saying. It goes, 'The deaf hear the truth that others speak past.' I never understood it before. Our elders would say it, but it seemed like empty comfort, something to make deaf children feel better about what they lacked." "And now," Josephine asked. "Now I think I understand. When you cannot hear words, you learn to hear something else. You learn to see intention. You learn to feel meaning. You learn to know when someone's actions match their heart." Squeezed Josephine's hand. "Your heart is very loud tonight." Josephine laughed. It was a silent laugh, her shoulders shaking, her face bright with joy. "That is the nicest thing anyone has said to me in a long time." They stood there for a moment, 2 deaf women from different worlds, connected by something that did not need sound to exist. "I should go," finally signed. "It is late, your family needs to rest." "Will you be okay, walking back alone?" Thought about her small room, about the silence that waited for her there. But somehow, the silence did not seem so heavy anymore. "I will be okay," she signed. "Better than okay, I think." Josephine nodded. Good, and do not be a stranger. The girls will not forgive me if you disappear. Maya is already planning to teach you something called Go Fish. It is a card game. I warn you now, she cheats. I will come back, promised, soon. Good, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Josephine. Walked back to her quarters through the quiet corridors of Unity Station. The Christmas lights cast soft colors on the walls. Through the windows, she could see Earth below, wrapped in clouds and city lights. Ships moved silently through the darkness, carrying travelers to distant places. She thought about the evening she had just experienced, the warmth of the food, the chaos of the conversation, the weight of Maya sleeping in her lap, the feeling of being seen, truly seen for the first time in her life. Humans were strange creatures. They could be thoughtless-like, leaving because communication was inconvenient. But they could also be like Josephine, David, Iris, and Maya. They could see a stranger standing alone and choose to make room. They could learn a whole new language just to talk to someone they loved. They could believe that different did not mean less. On her planet, the elders would have said that was missing something essential, that without the symphony, she could never truly connect with other beings, that she would always be on the outside looking in. But the elders were wrong. Connection did not require sound. It required intention. It required kindness. It required the simple act of seeing someone and choosing to reach out. Humans understood this in a way her own people never had. When reached her quarters, she set down the containers of food and sat by her small window. Earth glowed below, beautiful and blue. Somewhere on that planet and somewhere on this station, people were celebrating Christmas. Families were together. Friends were laughing. Strangers were becoming less strange. She pulled out her tablet and began composing a message to Josephine. She asked if she could visit again next week, like had suggested. She asked if Maya would really teach her Go Fish. She asked if there were any other human traditions she should learn about. Before she sent it, she added one more line. Thank you for hearing me when I had no voice. Then she pressed send and watched the message fly across the station's network. Outside, the stars burned bright and cold. The universe was vast and old and often lonely, but scattered throughout it were people like Josephine and her family, people who saw the broken and chose to help them heal, people who saw the lonely and chose to bring them home. This, was beginning to understand, was what made humans special, not their ships or their stations or their technology, but their capacity for kindness, their stubborn belief that no one should be left behind, their willingness to learn a new language, set an extra plate, and open their door to a stranger on Christmas Eve. They called this a deficiency. They said humans were too emotional, too illogical, too soft. But knew the truth now. The humans were not soft. They were strong in ways that mattered, strong enough to make space for someone different, strong enough to see past the barriers that others could not, strong enough to love without conditions. That was a strength worth traveling across the galaxy to find. Smiled as she got ready for bed. Tomorrow she would wake up and go to work. She would translate documents and earn her wages. She would move through a station full of beings who did not know her name. But she would not be alone anymore. She had a family now, a strange, beautiful human family who had found her when she was lost. And that made all the difference. In the quiet of her room, fell asleep with a full heart and a peaceful mind. And for the first time in years, she did not dream of silence. She dreamed of hands dancing in the air, speaking words that needed no sound. She dreamed of belonging. She dreamed of home,